All right, so welcome to our Instructor Training Center CCNA Security class for spring 2018. There's a couple things I want to do to begin with because I know a lot of you in this class may not have had a previous class with us at Stanley Community College. Every one of you have already completed the introductory assignment inside of moodle.stanley.edu, and really for moodle.stanley.edu, just log into that site about every week or so. And that's just to, quote, get attendance. The majority, well, almost everything you do will be done inside of NetAcad or in NetLab. So if you go into NetAcad under your I'm Learning tab, you should see the class, okay? And that class is the ITC CCNA Spring 2018. And then for this course, I'll go ahead and tell you, the best way to navigate my courses is in the modules item. So when you click on modules, you will see a listing for each chapter, and you also will see student support and resources. This is where you get Packet Tracer if you don't happen to have Packet Tracer. You can download it. It's also, if you happen not to have, you need to check your configuration to make sure the Packet Tracer exams will work correctly. You can run this Packet Tracer skills-based environment checker, but you can download here at the resources. You can actually download either 64-bit or 32-bit Packet Tracer. So that's where you get Packet Tracer in this course, and it is student support and resources. Each module will have a chapter that you'll read. I sent out a YouTube lecture, and I know it was on an older version, but the chapter 1 and chapter 2 are so close to each other in the older version, I just used the same video. You will then have packet tracers if there are packet tracers for a particular chapter, and then you will have labs, and underneath each one of those you will have an upload button. So for instance, this social engineering lab is a Word document. You'll download it to your machine. You will fill your answers in, preferably in a different colored text than black, so say blue, light blue, dark blue, so I can see easily what you've typed in. And then you upload that completed assignment to this lab upload, okay? These first two are pretty easy labs. I want to make you aware, though, of something that is very different from other courses you've had. If you've had any of the Introduction to Networks or Routing Switching Essentials, any of the other CCNA courses, you are accustomed to having a large number of labs in each particular module. And then you go and look at this and you see, well, there's one lab in each one of these chapters. Well, don't be fooled. These labs, okay, are huge. These labs, when you download the lab for 216, okay, you got to understand that this lab is very long, okay? It is not a 2 or 3 pages. You know, this is a 38-page lab. So do not think that you're going to be able to complete the lab in an hour when you do your reservations on NetLabs. When you do your reservations on NetLabs for the labs in security, I strongly recommend that you go in and actually do a 4-hour reservation. So let me go, got to get to my tab. Ah! It's all of your stuff there. I get to my tab here. I go into my NetLabs. So when you go in on NetLabs, you're going to have a class, and that class is ITC Spring 18 CCNA Sec, and you will probably only see that class. You can pick one of the different labs here, and be aware too in the class, one thing to be very clear on is that when you get in the lab itself and you go to make a reservation, you can make a reservation at the current moment, so that's where the red line is, that's the current time, or you can easily go forward and say I've got time in, you know, on Sunday to do a lab or on Saturday. You'll notice most people don't make future labs. So if you know you've got time, go ahead and make use of it. I've got 65 instructors in classes, so don't think that just because I have 5 pods that there will be something available guaranteed this weekend. Please try to plan those labs. But I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to go ahead and just do it. I'm not going to do 2 hours or 4 hours, but I would tell you that for all the labs that you're doing inside of CCNA security, they are so long, I would suggest doing a 4-hour lab reservation. So be aware too, once you do a lab reservation in NetLabs, this is real gear. So it does not automatically boot up, and it does not, it takes a little bit. You also notice that these labs the lab has a fairly big setup. 2 routers, 2 switches, 3 routers, 2 switches, 2 PCs. I will tell you that one of the things I tend to do with this class is build myself a very basic config that I keep in a text file that I can just drop in for each one of the routers. And that makes it a whole lot easier as you go from lab to lab, because most of them have the exact same thing on each one of them for the basics of IP addressing and those items. So that's something you may want to do, is just create a little Word doc or a little notepad doc that you keep, and every time you go in a lab, just dump it in. The course itself is designed, obviously, and mapped to the CCNA Security 2.0. I strongly recommend that once you get to the end of this course, when you go to take the final exam, you're going to make higher than a 75, because you're going to make higher than a 75. Make sure you make higher than a 75. I'm nodding my head here, because on the final exam, if you do, you will get a discount voucher for the CCNA security test. For our hands-on skills exam, one of the things I do in here, the hands-on skills exam is actually this lab right here. So when you go to do this lab, module 11, this comprehensive lab, and you upload it, I will grade it and give you a grade both on the Chapter 11 lab and also on the hands-on final. So be aware there's not a secondary skills assessment that I give you. These two down here are for you to practice for this comprehensive lab, and it is a very, very comprehensive lab. Okay. And for some reason, my Chapter 11 upload, I'll fix that. I don't have an upload for the packet tracers for Chapter 11. Hey, Jay. So, any questions on the format of the class? You read, we talk about it, we do labs, we do packet tracers if there are packet tracers. You upload them, then you do labs and upload those labs, and then you complete the chapter exams. Jay noticed that the quizzes were set to just allow you to have one chance or one attempt. I actually went into the quizzes and edited the quiz so that you can have multiple attempts on the quizzes. So quizzes are not required, but they're just a good thing to do to get ready to take the chapter exam.
Kelly, this is Chris with a quick question.
Yeah, shoot.
You were talking about having sort of a base config on devices that you could just upload the text when you do a NetLab.
Yep.
Is it possible, if I have a fully functioning lab on my campus, that I can basically build it at my own pace, make all the files, and then go to NetLab real quick and just upload it instead of needing to reserve 4 hours?
Oh yeah, it'd be fine. You just go in. If you've got folks, if you've got real gear on your campus and you want to test your gear, especially because remember, all of these will require a security image and with the security feature sets turned on. So if you want to test your equipment in your lab, feel free to do that. The only thing you have to do is once you get in here and get into NetLabs itself, you can actually just copy and paste. So you can edit, paste. Just remember that when you paste in a config, you need to make, even though you paste it in, you're going to have to go issue no shuts on the interfaces if you don't have that as part of the config.
Okay. Well, what are those standard like 1941 routers, or what are, with the security image, or?
These are all 2900s with the universal K9M image.
Okay.
And let this thing finish booting, and I'll show you the feature set.
Sure.
Come on now. There you go. NetLabs has still got control of it. So here in a second, they give me back control. Okay. I gotta remember how to do it. Show license feature. See, even I had to go look stuff up. But you'll see here that the security K9 image is turned on. Okay, and so you just got to make sure that is turned on. That's what gives you the encryption protocol keys that you need for the lab.
Thank you.
And you know, if you need help turning on feature sets, let me know, and I'll show you how to. We can go through that as part of the class, and we actually talk a little bit about it. But one thing to realize, as long as you've got an Academy maintenance agreement, you can enable feature sets, and they're going to say that they're an evaluation license for like 90 days, 60 days. I think it's 60 days. Then after that, they will convert into a right to use. And when you do a right to use, it basically means you agree that you have the license. Well, if you have Academy maintenance at your school, you are legal to use any image that is associated with the Academy. Now, in this, by the way, in this setup, only excuse me, only R1 and R3 actually need the security K9 images or feature set turned on. The R2 can get away without it because it's just a router in the middle. All right. Now, one thing I do want to make you aware of is when you're in a lab, always do the lab using this content. I know in the class you've got a Word document down here, and that Word document you can fill in. So here's your Word document that you can write in your answers to any of the questions. But when you are doing the lab itself, you need to be following this PDF from inside NetLabs, because look, it says this lab has been updated to use on NetLab Plus. So if you're working in NetLabs, make sure you always use the information from the show lab content. If you don't, you may run into some little issues about not really interfaces so much as it may say connect the cable to blah, and you're going to go, how do I connect the cable? You're not going to see that in here. It's going to basically omit those examples. All right. Are there any questions about that? Any questions about NetLabs? Again, do not schedule short times in the NetLabs if you're doing the labs on the NetLabs. If you're building them like Chris is on his own gear and then pasting them in, that's fine. But I would like, the one place I will ask you, Chris, to do, to actually do it on my gear fully is when you do that comprehensive lab for Lab 11. That way I can see that you type the commands in and you know, just to prove it.
Yeah, I may just try it once just to see how it works. But yeah, you know, if I can block the time, but I just figure if I don't need to take up 4 hours that somebody else needs.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. Todd, yes, there should be. Yeah, hold on. Yes. Can everybody hear me other than Todd?
I hear you.
Okay.
Kelly, Jay, I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. So I am going to jump back over here and go into modules. Again, remember, modules is where we will be navigating all of our NetAcad portions from. Chapter 1, folks, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on. You even notice, one thing I will tell you real quickly. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. You do have due dates in here. Okay, so for instance, your first labs aren't due till this weekend, February 18th. In fact, the Chapter 1 exam is not due till then. You also notice that you've got a good amount of time here between different ones. Hold on one second. Sorry, folks. But I do put due dates on things, but these are not set in stone. These due dates are recommendations. If you miss it by a day or two or a week or two, well, preferably not 2 weeks, but if you miss it by a week, I'm not going to have a heart attack, okay? I'm not going to give you a 0. The thing is, by May 9th, you've got to be finished with the class. So that's the only reason why I put all of these in, is so that you have actual due dates. If you are like me, if I have no due dates, it's very difficult for me to be able to stay focused. So again, I have a no freak out policy in all my classes. When you see these due dates, don't freak out. If you're on vacation the week that Chapter 4 is due, go have vacation and enjoy yourself. Just try to catch up when you get back, okay? So I am in no way, shape, or form one of those instructors who is anal about due dates, especially with my instructors, because I know that all of you are doing full-time jobs and all of you have classes you're teaching yourself. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Those who've been in my classes before know that, but some of you guys are new and haven't been in classes before. So, all right, so let's look at Chapter 1. I'm just going to blow through some things pretty quickly. You watched the video, I hope, and I know it doesn't completely match what we're doing here, but I do want to show you this. This is pretty cool. This is the Norse attack map that's going on right now, and you can see Microsoft Corporation keeps attacking people, which means somebody's spoofing the IP addresses that are actually under Microsoft. You'll see the #1 attack origin and the #1 target is us. And then right below that, China is the #2. And UAE is actually the 2nd attack target, which is it's getting hit pretty hard today. I've been watching that. It's kind of interesting how the UAE has been getting hammered. And then Spain, Singapore, on down through for targets. And then look at different types. SMTP is the #1 type, and so that's probably someone spoofing emails from Microsoft to someone, because you can see here Microsoft Corp, Attacker IP, Attacker Geo, Target, Calv Junction, SMTP. And that may actually be a misconfigured trigger that Norse has got, that it's seeing this as an attack for some reason when it's really just something to do with Office 365. That is also a possibility. But kind of cool little thing to show for your students. Now, I'm not going to spend any time on reasons for network security, because I think for the most part, all of you are here because you know about it. A lot of the material that I've got here is, in fact, material that is in a typical Security Plus class that will be reviewed for your students. I do think it's worth discussing the idea of structured and unstructured attacks. Okay. When you think about a structured attack, what do you think about when you think about structured? Anybody? Well, a structured attack, Chris, you got something?
I was going to mute just to see if I could chime in with something. I mean, I would assume it means it's something that they have brought some tools with a specific strategy in mind.
Yeah, that would be. That would be. Sorry, Chris, I stuck your head.
I can be 100% wrong too. That's okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Say that again. I'm sorry. Somebody stuck their head in the door and they completely lost the train of thought.
Someone has, specific tools designed to bring about a very specific kind of attack.
Exactly. That's exactly right. A structured attack knows what it's going after. Okay. It knows what it wants to get, and it has the tools to make that happen. Or they build the tools to make it happen. Or there have been structured attacks to where people took a job of the company for the very purpose of getting internal to the company and then running an attack to get source code to then take to another country. So a structured attack is when you know what you're going after. And there can be structured internal attacks where, again, that was the example I just gave where somebody took a job in a company with the intent of stealing source code. There can be external structured attacks. A great example of that was one that took place a couple years ago where some government contractors were attacked and then that was used, actually RSA was hacked to get the secret sauce for the RSA key fob hash code, and then that was used to then go and get information from another vendor that used those key codes or those hash fobs that they carry around. And then there are unstructured attacks. Unstructured attacks can just be someone who's just rattling the door handle, so to speak. So going around, seeing if somebody's left their car unlocked and they can get in it. So someone doing port scans and just trying to find something. So not really going after anything in particular, but just seeing what's out there. And those two can be unstructured internal or unstructured external attacks. Now, data loss, obviously this is big. You can't really turn on the TV without seeing some company that's been breached in some form or fashion, or some local government that's had their servers encrypted by ransomware and having to pay money, or just everything you see uses computer technology and security. So that's a big thing now. We can look at all the different ways of protecting a campus. How many of you have heard of the very, very bad bugs in the ASA firewall devices? Scott has.
Nope.
Chris, have you heard of them?
No, this is making me worry.
Oh, it's bad. It's real bad. Let me see if I can find it. Let's go ahead and say vulnerability. Okay, I believe this is it here. It's a remote. It is CVE 2018-0101, and it is a remote code execution and denial of serviceability vulnerability. And it is, let's see, basically you can craft an XML file, and you can actually gain root access and then make the machine do whatever you want. It is a bad thing. See if I've got the URL. Here it is. It also has a base score of 10, which is one of the highest scores I've ever seen. It is a critical. So additional attack vectors and features, so it's even been updated. They thought for a while it was only one vector, but now there's multiple vectors on the ASAs. So it's the vulnerability. You've got to have secure socket layer or ITC v2 remote access services enabled. Okay, but I would still definitely patch your software. And you can see here it's all this 5500s, 5500Xs, so 5506s, any of the modules, any of the firepower appliances. It's basically everything they have had the vulnerability. So it's well worth investigating if you haven't, because it is a major issue right now. There are patches out there for it. You just have to upgrade your iOS on the device. So sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news. But that just goes back to say too that guess what? Everything has to be patched. There will be vulnerabilities found, and you just have to do the best that you can. We'll kind of go through that because these are all things you know about. I think this one is interesting, the data center, because you're looking at physically protecting the data center. You know, when you really look at a data center, there's not a whole lot of people that work at the actual data center. Many of them are HVAC and power folks, and then the administration of the other items is handled remotely. So this is interesting to me. Seismically braced server racks protect people and equipment. You don't want your racks falling over and killing people. Backup generators. Another thing that's kind of interesting too, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's been a lot of look at how loud noises can damage hard drives. And so there was a data center that had some kind of fire extinguisher test, and it made a loud crack. And that sharp noise caused the failure of a large number of hard drives inside of the data center. So here's security traps like man traps. We got to go in one side and out the other. And then biometrics. All those are there. Now, these are some new things here that's not in the video I gave as much, but it's the idea of hyperjacking, so taking over the actual hypervisor. You know, if you can take over the hypervisor and the machines above have no idea what's going on, you can do just about anything. Instant on activation, the fact that when VMs are brought up, they may not be following your security policy, so that's a big problem in the data center. And also antivirus storms. So you boot up a bunch of VMs, and those VMs all hit your AV system to try to pull down antivirus updates, and that can cause a storm, that can cause an issue. Feel free to add anything in here, folks, when you start talking about evolving network border. What are some of the things you see as big new problems in the cybersecurity field? Feel free to type, feel free to. I see the Internet of Things being huge. You know, I've got Blink cameras in my house, and I like to ask this. Type in the chat how, or just tell me, how many devices are connected to your home network? Just roughly. Okay, 12.
Say it again, please.
How many devices are connected to your home network?
Oh, geez.
Direct TV boxes and your Chromecast and your Fire Sticks and
your smart home Alexa stuff.
Yep, Alexa and Google Home. I would have to say I've got about 20 devices on my network at home, and that's PCs, laptops, phones, gaming consoles, TVs. You know, I just bought a new soundbar, an LG soundbar, and the LG soundbar has built-in Chromecast on it, so you can plug in. I'm not going to use it because I got Chromecast. I've got an actual Chromecast high def connected to my TV, but it's crazy. To me, that is one of the biggest things. It's not just the fact that computers are faster and can do more things in terms of scanning and et cetera, but it's the number of things we're putting on our networks. And some of those things were never designed to be secure. So, smart TVs scare me. I love it, but they scare me. So, you've probably heard of these before. White hat hackers, they're the people that do it for good reasons, and that's what we are trying to develop in our students, our white hat hackers. Gray hat hackers are, they might commit crimes and do unethical things, but not necessarily for gain or to cause damage. This may be someone who just likes the thrill of breaking in places. The bad news is, you know, tell your students, gray hat hackers go to jail all the time too. And then there's the black hat hackers, and their job and their entire reason for being around is they want to break into things, steal things, make money. I always tell people, you know, you ask why people become hackers and steal money through hacking. Well, there's a lot less chance you're going to get shot if you're doing hacking than there is if you're robbing banks. You know, the chance of getting shot being a hacker is pretty low. I won't say it won't happen, but it's pretty low compared to robbing banks. So it's a pretty lucrative field to be in, especially if you're smart. Now, what type of hacking titles? We've got script kiddies. Those are people who just know the basics. Now, one of the things that I think is very important to realize is that the term script kiddie, yeah, it's supposed to be a little bit derogatory, but at this time and place in computer security, there are so many automated tools like Metasploit. There are exploit kits that you can get a hold of. There are some seriously powerful tools that don't take a great deal of knowledge to use that can be used to do a lot of damage. So script kiddies, although used to be we just dismiss them as somebody staying in mom and dad's basement, no, now you have to actually even consider them to be a threat because they have access to such powerful tools. Vulnerability broker, this is somebody who is gray hat. They find it, and then they go out and try to sell it to somebody. You know, And sometimes companies actually ask people, they say, hey, we'll give you $25,000 if you can find a vulnerability in our software. Hacktivists, they're gray hat that go in and break into places to protest or to have a political agenda. Cyber criminals is all about the money. Okay, they just want the cash. And then this is also one of the growing areas, and that is state-sponsored. You know, entire military divisions in certain countries that are dedicated to sabotaging networks. I don't know if many of you are aware, but the actual network behind the Olympics went down during the opening ceremonies. And so it was taken down by a hacker or by malware. And so it's one of those things where you're trying to figure out, you know, who did that and why, and they think it was someone who had a great deal of insider knowledge on the network itself. So cyber criminals are pretty easy. You know, there could be sometimes former government folks who are now trying to make money. Hacktivists, not for profit, but just for trying to push an agenda. So anonymous, you know, a Syrian electronic army. State-sponsored could be anybody. I mean, I would say every single country in the world has state-sponsored hackers now. The real question is, and some questions we haven't answered, is what constitutes a state or an act of war in cyberspace? Here's a very neat thing. It used to be that technical knowledge, you had to have very high knowledge in order to do anything with the attack tools. As we moved into 2015, now the tools are very sophisticated, so your technical knowledge can go down. I'm not going to spend much time here because I know what password crackers and all these are. I will say one of the things that's not really listed here are exploit kits. So they're actually kits that are built and then sold to folks to use so that you can exploit systems pretty easily. Eavesdropping attacks, data modification, denial of service. You've all heard of these, man in the middle, where you're intercepting communications and then pulling a copy off. Sniffers. Now malware. Malware has also seen a big rise, especially in drive-by malware, malware that's easy to get on your machine by just going to a site. Used to be with viruses, they had to actually be physically moved, and that's one thing about a virus. By definition, a virus cannot spread itself. It has to be spread either with a USB drive or CDs or whatever. By the way, I've heard many times the easiest way to break into a company is buy like a 32 gig or bigger USB drive that's got hacking tools on it and drop it in the cafeteria at a major business. Because what's everybody going to do? They're going to grab it and go, ooh, look what I found, and plug it in their computer, and then you can have it silently load the information that you want. So that's the kind of thing we have to protect against, and why some companies actually disable USB drives. Trojan horse is just like the Greek mythology tale. It is an item that is one thing, appears to be one thing, but is in fact another. For instance, you download Whack-A-Mole, and it's this nice little game on your phone, and come to find out it's actually a piece of malware that is infecting your phone. We do have different types of Trojan horses. Remote access enables unauthorized access. Data sending provides sensitive data. Corrupt data, destructive proxy, uses a computer to launch attacks and basically makes it into a zombie, FTP, and so on and so forth. Now here's one, worms versus viruses. And you need to know this. Worms can propagate themselves. So you see the initial code red, worm infection, and then 19 hours later. Now here's one thing too, look, here's the initial slammer worm, and then 30 minutes later, look at the difference. So as the world has become more connected and faster connections, you can see how much quicker. 19 hours to do this, 30 minutes for the slammer worm to do this. So it is definitely, worms are faster and more infectious than they used to be. So common worm pattern is enable a vulnerability or exploit a vulnerability. and then it propagates itself and delivers a payload on the opposite side. So with the enabling vulnerability, it should be exploiting vulnerability. When it installs itself using an exploit mechanism, then it propagates by, let's say, pulling everybody's email addresses out of your email address book, and then sends that payload on to the next victim. So Code Red would propagate for 19 days, launch a DOS for 7, stop and go dormant, and then repeat. So it was a kind of a weird little thing, but it was pretty bad. I think some of the most dangerous malware we have now is cryptoware, or the malware that's encrypting hard drives, and ransomware, and it is becoming quite a problem. There's also scareware where things pop up and say, your machine is infected, you're going to die if you don't do this, or your machine's going to blow up. I had someone call claiming to be from Microsoft, and they said my machine was producing static on the internet, and I played along with them and just laughed at them and said, just quit, don't even try it. Phishing, taking emails. By the way, there's another type of phishing called spear phishing, and this is where you don't just send emails to everybody, but you do enough research in a company, and then you spear phish. You go and you look and find out that this person likes to have, or their favorite basketball team is this, and so you send them a phishing email that's an invitation to come to a special event for that basketball team. So it's spear phishing. Reconnaissance attacks. Now, one of the things I want to kind of introduce you to is what's called the cyber kill chain. Have any of you heard of the cyber kill chain?
Nope.
All right, the cyber kill chain was developed by Lockheed Martin as part of a intelligence defense-driven model for looking at cybersecurity intrusion activity. Now, you look at it, and it is, first off, let me give you the mnemonic to remember it. Real, and I'm not in any way being sexist, okay, I'm not trying to be sexist, but real women date engineers in combat armor. So real women date engineers in combat armor. So in the cyber kill chain, the first thing that's going to happen is someone's going to do reconnaissance. So they're going to figure out the best way to get into your company. They're then going to develop an exploit into a deliverable payload. So they're going to weaponize something, an exploit kit, some type of message that's got an attachment. They're going to deliver it in some form or fashion. And then they're going to exploit the system, install the malware, get command and control, so you have control over the item that you've exploited, and then you're going to do action on objectives. And this is with hands-on keyboard access, you're going to get whatever you want. So you're going to be able to grab whatever you want. Folks, give me 1 second. All right, so real women date engineers in combat armor. So this is a cyber kill chain. And when we look at this reconnaissance, you'll notice that obviously is the first part of the cyber kill chain. So it's kind of a neat little thing to introduce your students to, because it is something that's also in the CCNA Cyber Ops class that has just been released. It's talking about the kill chain. So reconnaissance attacks, it can be everything from ping sweeps. It can be something as simple as looking over the website of a organization. It can be who-is lookups. It can be doing searches across the internet for information on company itself, about mergers or about changes in management. Then access attack, this is when you're going in to actually gain access. On the cyber kill chain, this would be when you weaponize and then delivered your weapon, and you're moving into the exploitation phase. So you're actually going to exploit it and gain access so you can do actionable attacks. So password attacks, when you try to guess attacks or break attacks through brute force. Trust exploitation, when you gain access to one system that is trusted by another system and use that to pivot. Port redirection, man in the middle. I know a lot of these are at man in the middle attacks. This happens a lot at like Starbucks or whatever, where someone's sitting there trying to take over and be in the middle. And then buffer overflow attacks are where you exceed the buffer space for an input field, and then that spills into another area of memory, and then you can execute code if it has not been correctly written. Social engineering is huge. I mean, it's one of those things where you just have basically shysters who go in and pretend to be something they're not. It's also one of the easiest ways to break into a network. Just go in and act like you're a copy repair person and go in there and put a little wireless access point inside. The negative is for that is you do have to go on site, so it's a little bit dangerous in that respect. Any questions about denial of service attacks? I think we know a couple ways of doing it. One is just sending a large amount of malformed packets, or you can just send even a huge amount of normal traffic. And that's even worse, because then it's hard for the site being attacked to determine what is actual proper traffic and what is not, what is part of the DDoS or denial of service attack. Here's a Syn Flood. So you spoof, what you do here is you spoof an IP address and you send a bunch of sends to it. Well, the server sends a SYN-ACK and has a half-open connection. Well, because the IP address that initiated all these sends was spoofed, when this machine sends a SYN-ACK, it never gets back an ACK. And as a result, all these, you basically use up the entire half-open buffer space on the web server. Many of these attacks now today are blocked by ASAs and other next-generation firewalls, because they can actually issue a SYN-ACK or an ACK back to the web server so it can close its half-open connections. They also can see these types of attacks occurring. Okay. I think DDoS attacks, fairly common. Everyone's big thing about them is seeing how the zombie networks are built by infecting machines with malware, and then a command and control is used to send that to send information to those zombies and make them attack a particular site. And there's a video here you can watch. I'll let you do that. It's live on social engineering. Now, some of the security professionals, security operations manager, that's at the very top of the security operations center, usually reports to chief information security officer or chief information officer, or the CISO reports to the CIO. And then you've got chief security officers and security managers, and then you've got network security engineers down here. You've also got underneath the SecOps manager, tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 analysts who would be doing actual looking at intrusion attempts and then making decisions about how you will deal with those attempts. One of the problems with security is it's like insurance. When you buy all these security items and you put them in place, if nothing happens, everybody thinks you're wasting money. But the reason that you're not wasting money is because you're preventing those attacks from happening. Here's a bunch of different groups: SANS, Mitra, CERT. All of these are organizations that deal with vulnerabilities and training. SANS is a big training company. Now, the three items here are very important when we talk about security, and they are confidentiality, and this is called the CIA triad, by the way. But confidentiality is ensuring that only people who should be able to see information can access and see that information. Encryption is used to provide confidentiality. Integrity is making sure information is not changed. So hashing algorithms are used to ensure that anytime you move data and it was received on the opposite end, that it is in fact the data you sent. And availability assures it's accessible, and that can be everything from backup systems to UPSs to you name it. This triad is very important because it is one of the things we use to protect our data. And one of the things you need to think about is data at rest, data in motion. Okay, that's two different states, and data in use. Those are three things. So data at rest would be on some type of storage device. Data in motion would be moving between systems. Both of those can be handled by encryption. And then data in use is when it's actually in RAM and memory. And that gets a little trickier as to how you control that. Okay, Chris, that's no problem. Take off. These are the 12 domains of security as defined by CISSP. Anybody got their CISSP here? Everything about CISSP I know is it's about 2 miles wide and a half inch deep. So something down the road I wouldn't mind doing, but it's not on the list at the moment. CCNA CyberOps on the list at the moment. Get that one. So security policies, obviously they have to be defined and implemented. You know, you need a large group of people and buy-in from the teams that are going to be affected by the network security policy. You need to define what your assets are, what the threats of those assets are, how you're going to mitigate those threats. So all of that is part of this security policy that you're going to create. You're going to look at trying to create what they call the security architect. We used to call it the onion, okay, security onion. And the artichoke is you chip away at these hard outer layers to get down inside to the data. And so what we try to do is we try to make sure that we can put our data in the middle and keep it secure. I still like the onion better because it makes you cry. So early firewalls and IPSs were in a lot of ways stateful, but they were not extremely intelligent. Newer devices today, and one of the things that Cisco has developed is this, they call it Secure X in this particular chapter, which talks about their devices such as their web security devices and context aware. All of this Cisco Security Intelligence Operations, which deals with their ASAs, which now has firepower, their email security appliance and web security appliance. Much of this and the SIO has been integrated into Cisco Talos, which is a intelligence-based system where you take your information and that is set up. Everything's looked at locally, but anything that is not understood can be sent to Talos, and Talos will go out there and look at the telemetry from those agents and try to spot zero-day attacks and information. So if you got time to look at Talos, it's neat to kind of go out here and look at it, and also look at some of the vulnerabilities that are going out, and also some of the information that they have. and Talos. So spend some time there. Palo Alto has their Wildfire system, and so Wildfire is basically Palo Alto's Talos. In many ways, Cisco is just now catching up with some of the things that Palo Alto has been doing for a couple of years. So, how do we mitigate malware? Well, antivirus software is one. You also can have, especially with your email, you can have something like the email scanning service at the edge of your network. Mitigating worms, a lot of that's containment. Once you see a worm taking place, and this is what a smart network can do. It can see a worm trying to spread and immediately shove that machine into a VLAN that cannot access other parts of the network. And the hope is, though, we catch it before it gets on the machine. Reconnaissance attacks, a lot of ways you stop that is by disabling ICMP, using authentication on links so that information can't be read, using anti-sniffing tools to find any interfaces that are in promiscuous mode, use switched infrastructure. That makes it much harder to do reconnaissance and man-in-the-middle attacks, and then use firewalls and IPSs. Strong passwords, there's a big debate about passwords being useless. A lot of people are saying they are and that we really need to go to something different. I would say that passwords with multi-factor authentication, so passwords with a PIN or passwords with some type of other secondary authentication method helps. But still, we do need something better than passwords at this point. Denial of service attacks are extremely hard to stop. The only real way to do it is to have devices that can do traffic shaping and traffic denial. Work with your ISP if you come under attack by DOS or DDoS attack to try to stop it at the ISP level coming into you. It's a very difficult thing to do. Now, Cisco does talk about these three different, and I know we're getting up on an hour, folks, so I'm going to try to finish up right now, but three different areas that they need to secure, and that is the network foundation protections of the control plane, which is where you have information such as your device-generated packets, your routing packets, your IP tables, routing table message exchange. You've got the data plane where you're actually forwarding information, and then you got the management plane where you're doing management of the Cisco device with SNMP, TACUS, Plus, Radius, NetFlow, all those items. So how do I secure the control plane? Well, with routing protocols, you use routing protocol authentication. There's a thing called control plane policing. So it allows users to control the flow of traffic that gets handled by the route processor. So you can go in and write COPP policies. And auto secure, which is a feature that will actually go in and lock down many of the management plane features, will help to control access to the control plane. The management plane itself, number one, don't ever use Telnet. Number two, always use SSH and HTTPS. Do role-based access control and authorizing actions. In other words, for instance, when I log into a switch here on campus, I am given, I have to log in with my same domain account, and then I am given access to certain commands based upon my role and based upon who I'm logging in as. And then also you can use Cisco ACS and Cisco's newer platforms to do access reporting so that you get syslog information about who logged in where and every command that they issued. Then on the data plane, you can block unwanted traffic with access control lists, do anti-spoofing, especially on the outside edge. You know, make sure that you turn off any internal networks and don't allow it to originate from outside. Port security, DHCP snooping to stop rogue DHCP servers. Dynamic ARP inspection, all of those are possible on Cisco data planes. And we'll go over most of these in this class. And that, folks, is chapter 1, looking at some of the modern network security threats that we have out there today. Are there any questions about this first chapter and about what you need to do for this first chapter? At this point, Again, if you haven't read the chapter, please go back and read it because you do need to read it. You need to do these 2 labs, the social engineering lab and the researching, audit, and security attack and audit tools. If you can, look for some exploit kits. I think those are kind of neat to look at and what they're doing. And then do the Chapter 1 exam, and all those are due by Sunday. And then we will move into Chapter 2, which actually gets in how you control the management plane on a Cisco device. Are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to turn off the recording.